every evening on Tuesdays. Thank you for joining us. We're streaming on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitch, so feel free to share with a friend, share with a coworker, etc., or sit back and listen, because every week we product leaders in the space to really share their insights and their perspectives, their unique perspectives on product and the challenges, strategy, and vision. So thank you for joining us. Today, we have Stefan Dorfling, who's actually a senior product management consultant here at Product People, today talking about continuous product discovery. I'll introduce him in a bit, but first, a little bit about myself, your host. I'm an account executive with Product People. My background is actually in safety and process engineering with a bit of business development. So working on a bit of internal and external initiatives, one of them being these community events. So always open for feedback on how we can improve these as well. A little bit about Product People. Along with hosting these community events, we are also a product management consultancy. So we are the premier destination for product management and product ops services. Our mission is to help companies discover and deliver great products faster. By leveraging our community, our product managers do the unglamorous hands-on work of product managers and owners or product leaders on interim and fractional basis. So these are 3+ month contracts, and we tailor to your stage, your business model, culture, with direct supervision from our product leadership team. A little bit about Product People. Now, first, before we get into a little bit about Stefan, I'm going to launch a poll here. And please do feel free to answer in the YouTube chats and in the LinkedIn chat, as well as here in the Zoom. I'll read through the answers really quick just to get to know you before we dive into Stefan's presentation. So question number 1, have you had experience with product discovery practices in your role? A, yes, extensively. B, yes, to some extent. C, no, not yet. D, not sure. And then question number 2, if you haven't had experience in product discovery before, what is your biggest blocker to start? A, I am not confident and afraid of making too many mistakes. B, my stakeholders don't really buy into it. C, I don't know how to get started. D, I can't see the benefit of doing it. E, something else. I know what I would prefer for these, but really curious to hear what you all think. Go ahead and answer those. I'll end the poll shortly. Looks like we have a decent amount of responses here, so I'm going to shut the poll, share the results for you. Okay, so for question number 1, have you had experience with product discovery practices in your role? Most of you answered yes to some extent. That's good. That means that we're familiar with it, but there's always room to improve, isn't there? And hopefully Stefan will help us with that. And number 2, if you haven't had experience in product discovery before, what is your biggest blocker? It's sort of a mixed bag here. We have not confident, afraid of too many mistakes, stakeholders don't really buy into it, and then the something else answer as well. Thank you all for submitting those responses. Now to Stefan. So Stefan, like I mentioned, is a senior product management consultant here at Product People, having worked with numerous well-known companies like FreeNow and N26, and here to share a little bit more about product discovery. So continuous discovery. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and Stefan, you can take over.
Thanks, Stefan. Thanks for the introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Stefan. I hope you can see my screen. Yes. Okay, cool. So thanks everyone for your time today, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to also talk about this topic of discovery. And I've put in that 101 there because I've been working with quite a lot of associate product managers and junior product managers during my time at Product People. And something that comes up a lot is I've read about it, I've gone to some presentations and stuff, but I don't really know how to get started or what the practical elements of it is. So that's why I put that 101 there as well. I've realized with the shock this morning that my presentation is a little bit long, so I'm going to just scan over this part here. So my name's Stefan. I'm a senior product management consultant at Product People, and you can maybe pause YouTube or something if you want to read a bit more of my experience. I'm not going to go into that so much, but essentially I've worked in a bit of different organizations, and I originally come from South Africa, but the last like 4 months ago, I've moved to Berlin. Yeah. So I'm going to get started into the presentation now. So like I said, we've also answered this question now, like what are some of those blockages that makes us a little bit scared to do discovery? What I've heard from some of the associate product managers and the junior product managers is like, it's a little bit academical. I don't know how to do it practically. I'm scared of making mistakes. I'm scared to get my stakeholders on board. I don't know how to start. And to that, I kind of almost want to just tell you what some of the risks are, of not doing discovery. So yes, there are these things that are like kind of blocking you, but what about when you don't do it? And this is one of the stories that I want to tell you about when I just started off as a consultant in product management, one of my first clients. We were really pushed to deliver these like massive features every month, like at least one massive feature, like every month there. And it was a high growth startup company. So it made a lot of sense that we needed to do that. And we kind of gave ourselves this pat on the shoulder the whole time because we were delivering what we were asked to deliver, and we were delivering it on time. So we had this like false sense of accomplishment in a way, because I mean, we've delivered these features that you asked us to deliver. But as we were preparing for new investment rounds and looking at the metrics that we needed to achieve, we started seeing, okay, we're like frantically developing and delivering these things, but we're not really moving any metrics that we want to move. Now, this was a company working with B2B customers, and that time as well, providing a lot of value to businesses by helping them to make more efficient use of their SaaS tools and really benchmark that a little bit better. And I was tasked with automating this visibility of the SaaS stack, right? Because that was connected to how their revenue model worked. I'm not going to go into too much detail there. And we came up with this integration that we could do with a third-party tool where we could pull in all of your SaaS tools so that the business customer doesn't have to go and create any of these one by one and manually. So we put in all of them. Technically, it worked beautifully. We had the logos, we had the little tag on the side, we had like how much money you're spending on it, all of these things. But we pulled in everything. And we released this, super proud of ourselves. And then we saw, but people don't really use it, and the people that do use it kind of complain about it. They don't like it so much. And we realized at that point, like if I just spoke to one or two people before we kind of committed to this, the way that the solution was running, we would have been able to see that, okay, yes, we are right. People are frustrated by the fact that they need to create all of these elements on their profile manually, but they also don't want to have like 110 of these things popping up on their profile, which they need to work through. That's a little bit overwhelming. And number three, they still want to have some sort of control over their profile and the way that they use the platform. And with this integration that we built, we're taking that control completely away from them and also overwhelming them with every single piece of information that we found. So, all hope wasn't lost. I mean, we could adjust the feature after we've gotten some learnings, and we could let the customer actually select which of the appropriate SaaS tools they want to pull into this view, which we could then see after that really did bring up the usage and the people actually did enjoy and see value in this feature. But we could have skipped this whole part of where people were super unhappy and where we had this like very blurry part if we just tested it a little bit more and did a little bit more discovery before we went into delivery. So it actually not doing discovery in this sense cost us a little bit more money and a little bit more time. So with this learning and like how I realized that discovery was actually quite important, I wanted to today just share with you some step-by-step for going from zero to what I would define as hero level, I guess. But I think all of us are still learning how to do this and growing and improving. But I've broken the presentation down into 3 pieces for us. Just the basics, like what are some of those basic things that you need to have in place to just get started? Happy stakeholders. So, okay, now you're doing your discovery. How do you keep the stakeholders part of your journey? part of this story that you're building, and then how to continue doing this going forward. So within basics, I've said, okay, let's start off by looking at our customers. Let's move into action. Let's be practical. Let's fail fast and move on. Your happy stakeholders, just 3 things to also keep in mind. When you communicate to them, be clear on your common goals. When are you communicating to them? You want to over communicate actually. And with all of this, being data centric is kind of that foundation for you. And then continuously discovering after that. So you have a backlog, you know how to spot some quick wins, and you have a routine, and you're committing to that routine with your team. So let's start off with the basics and getting started. So being customer centric. So I think most of us know that it's really important for us to be customer centric and to think about our customers and to understand our customers and to know what they're going through. And sometimes I think maybe we should just be reminded about it a little bit more. So I've just put down 3 points here. So 1, talk to your customers, build some personas, and figure out what your customers actually experience. I think we can all remember like when we were teenagers and our parents would try to tell us who we are and how frustrated we were. And I think because they're not listening to who we think we are. And I think sometimes we do that to our customers as well. We want to tell them who they are and what they need without actually just talking to them and letting them tell us who they are. So now let's try to talk to them a little bit more. Let's try to get at least once a week, we talk to someone, some customers somewhere. But now having you to get started and building a persona, maybe you don't have a persona yet and you don't really completely understand your customer. You know what their role is, you don't really know a little bit more about them. So now talking to some of your customers, you have some insights from talking to your customers, and you can build a customer persona out of this as well. Now here, I want to try to also just tell you that you don't have to interview 100 customers to build a customer persona. If you have 5, 6, 7 customer interviews, you probably have enough information to build something that's good enough, to build a persona that's pretty good enough. And this customer persona can help you to show that you really understand who the person is that you're trying to solve for. And it can also help you to share it with your team and with your stakeholders and with your organization to say, this is the person that we're trying to solve for. And this is the things that we've learned about this person. So you can get so many examples of customer personas on the Mirrorverse, online. There's so many examples that you can get. I put down a silly example that I think is pretty helpful. So I like to put down a little picture of who I think, kind of represents this person that I'm trying to solve for in my persona, just to make this person really human and not just keep hiding behind the word customer and user, but this is actually someone. And I like to give them a name as well. Is this Mandisa? Is this Jennifer? Is this Michelle? Who is this person? And what is their role in my product? Are they a seller? Are they a buyer? Are they a driver, a passenger, a HR manager? Who is this person? And what are some of the key identifiers of this role? They just moved to Paris from Africa or something. What are those things that you look at to see, this is the type of person that we really want to try and solve for here. And then looking out of these different customers that you have, what are these common things that you can link to them? What are some of the common goals that they have? Some of the common challenges that they have in their roles? Why do they use your product, love your product, need your product? And what are some of the pain points that they face with your product? And then you're at the bottom also, it's pretty good when you just have some actual user quotes that you can put down to say, this is what they actually said, which was quite insightful for us to help us see where we need to go forward. And I think this also helps us to make sure that this picture that you're building, that it's not the voice of you, but that it's the voice of your customer, right? And that's essentially what we are trying to put down here, and not just making something that is what you think about who they are. And now that you have your customer, now thinking about, okay, what do they actually go through? How do they actually experience your product? Now this again, super easy, practical. You can go onto Mirrorverse and you can type in customer journey and you can find so many different ones. And with this, you can go as simple or as complex as you need to go for your product, for your organization, and for your type of customer that you have. I think this is the simplest that you can go, just saying, what is the journey that they have to go through? What are those steps? And who is this person that needs to go through these steps? And I kind of put this part in the beginning as well, the discovering your product, because I want to make sure that we also think about what happens right before someone actually downloads your app. What is that thing that triggers them to think, okay, I'm going to download this app, or I'm going to buy this product, or I'm going to use this product that you have, right? Our customers don't just like randomly start existing the moment they download our app, right? There's something that happens before that. And how can we unpack that journey and understand what our customers are going through? And I think this also gives us that that foundational view of what's going well currently. We can put some data down and say, okay, these steps are the things where people are falling off, blah, blah, blah. And we can see, okay, we went to our customers the first time because we wanted to learn who they are. Now, with a customer journey, I can say, I want to go back to my customers again, and I want to learn what's going on with this step. Why do they not like this step, or what's making it difficult for them in this step? So it gives you kind of a landscape to see, okay, what do I want to learn next as well? And now that we've talked about our customer and doing some research, we kind of want to get to the place where we actually do something as well. And this is, where it becomes easier to manage your stakeholders, because you're starting to not just go and do analysis paralysis, but you're moving forward and doing some practical stuff as well. So when thinking about being practical, I've broken it down from, like, some of you who've read like Continuous Discovery Habits, you also, many of these things would be quite known to you. Everything is not exactly the same, but I've tried to follow this approach as well. So you start off with, what's that thing that you want to achieve? Why are you doing any of these things that you're doing? What is that goal that you're trying to achieve? And what are these things, these unmet needs or goals or problems, these opportunities that are standing between what your product is today and where you want your product to be tomorrow? What are those things that are standing in between them? What are the solutions that you can test to see if you can solve or meet these needs? What are the hypotheses that you need in place and experiments that you need in place that you can see, can I disprove or prove that my solutions are going to be able to solve these opportunities? And I'm putting in the disprove there as well, because it's really dangerous when you fall in love with your solution too quickly, or ever really. And you need to be open to disproving that your solution will actually work. So that's the type of thinking that we need to apply. And then how all of this can help us to visually easily reflect for all our stakeholders and for ourselves what we've learned so far and what we're doing and what our next steps are. So I've broken this down into like one slide for each of these, and I want to just quickly go through them. So if we think about an outcome that we want to achieve, it's really just, what is that goal? Why are we doing any of these things? Because you have to remember, the business is giving you a lot of responsibility. You are going to do some discovery, you're going to do some delivery with the team. That costs the business money. And you need to know why you're doing this at the end of the day. You're not just doing it to keep the team busy, right? You want to actually achieve a result. So I've broken it down into two pieces, this slide for us. The top part is just a template and an example of one that I think works pretty well for me. And then at the bottom, just some questions that you can ask yourself when you are drafting this outcome that you want to achieve. So for a template, you can follow this one, or you can change it depending on what works for you. Our desired outcome is to do something like increase, decrease, measurable metric by this amount within a realistic time frame. So as an example, let's say we were an e-commerce business. We could say our desired outcome is to decrease cart abandonment rate by 20% by February 2024. And the questions that you need to ask yourself when you're designing this outcome is whether this outcome is written in a smart way. Is it specific? Is it measurable? Is it achievable? Is it relevant? And is it time bound? Okay, and I'm going to move on to the next slide now, because I know we have quite a few that we need to try to get through. Now we talk about opportunities, right? So what are those things that are stopping or standing between you or where your product is today and where your product needs to be, what your outcome is? Sorry, I just see some messages coming through. Oh yes, the presentation will be shared. It will be live on YouTube, so you can see it through there as well. Okay, so the opportunities are those things that are standing between you and the outcome that you want to achieve, the product where you are today and where your product wants to go to. Now, these opportunities can be needs, they can be goals, they can be desires, they can be pain points, but these are just those things that if you solve this, it can get you one step closer to reaching that outcome that you want to achieve. And then a question that I've heard previously from some associates and some junior product managers as well is, okay, but where do I find these opportunities? Now, there are two main sources, and it sounds pretty vague when I say it, but the one is quantitative sources and the one is qualitative sources. So your quantitative sources are those number places that you can go to, when you think numbers. So I can go on a dashboard, on a Tableau dashboard, or, some tool that we have that we track information on SQL or whatever, and we can see the actual numbers. And usually that can help tell you what is going on, like this is the problem. And the qualitative sources is when you actually talk to someone, when you have an interview, when you have a survey where they can, give you some answers, where they have app ratings and things like that, that can tell you a little bit more than just what's going on, but it can tell you why something is frustrating for someone or why something is not working so well for someone. And then when you're writing an opportunity, you need to ask yourself whether this is framed as a solution or as an opportunity, because sometimes I think it comes out of a good place. Us as humans, we try to come up with solutions for things, but we need to just take this step by step a little bit and spend a little bit more time in the problem area. So if we write down an opportunity, we need to make sure that there's more than one way to solve this opportunity. Otherwise, it's a solution. And that we don't just say, let's take this example that I've written down on the side. So we said we're an e-commerce business. We want to decrease our cart abandonment rate. One of the things that someone has said somewhere is that they don't like using bank transfers. Now, if you wrote this down, I don't have, let's say, Apple Pay, or I don't have PayPal, there's not a lot of different ways that you can solve that, right? But if you write it down, there's only one payment option, bank transfer, available to me upon checkout. That's one of the things that makes me not continue to payment when I get to the checkout page. Now, there's more than one way to solve for this. It's relevant to our outcome, and it's not framed as a solution. And then the third thing that I've also heard people ask is, which one do I choose? So I've had these interviews, I've looked at the data, but now I've found 15 opportunities, and I can't solve all 15 at once. And here, it's a very frustrating answer that I'm going to give you, but it kind of depends. As long as you do prioritization of whatever kind works for your organization, for your product, for you, what you understand, but just do some prioritization. But I'm not going to tell you this prioritization model is the one size fits all. It could be ICE scoring. It could be a Pareto. It could, whatever you decide to do, Kano model, whatever you decide to do that prioritization for, just do some prioritization and say, okay, these are our top 3 priorities based on this prioritization. And this is the one that we're going to go for. And again, and we get into this a little bit later, if it's not the best prioritization model, it's okay. You can learn, you can grow, you can see that it's not working, and then try something else. But at least just try some prioritization model. Okay. So now you know what you want to achieve. You have some things that are blocking you to get there. But now you need to come up with, okay, but what are we going to do? How are we going to solve this opportunity? And here also, the opportunities are as wide as the planet is wide, of things that you can do with your team to come up with solutions. You can have a brainstorming session. You can have mind mapping. You can have a Google Sprint, design sprint day or week or something that you can come up with some solutions that you can test. And then the question is like, okay, what 1 or 2 solutions can you and your team come up with that could solve your opportunity? So let's take the same example that we spoke about previously. So I don't have any other payment methods except bank transfer. And one of the solutions that you can come up with is, okay, we've seen PayPal is something that most people have in Europe. For example, out of the data that we see, Apple Pay is too restrictive, Google Pay is too restrictive. We want to try the one that's the most widely used. That's a solution that we can test. Maybe that's then the solution that you come up with. And then you move into, okay, but how can we test this? What is the hypothesis and what is the experiment that we can do? Now, maybe you say, okay, so we're going to say PayPal. We want to make this a quick test so that we can learn quickly and move on. So we don't want to develop too much. Let's maybe do, I don't know, a fake door test where we put that just in the front end. We have a button that says pay with PayPal. And if someone clicks on it, we say, sorry, this is not available in your region yet, or something like that, just to see if we put this in, and this is where the hypothesis comes in, we think that at least 10% more people would click on payment if they had the option to do PayPal. So then you know, okay, this is a testable experiment now. We can see if this reaches this metric, this is a good enough solution, and we can take it live and iterate from there. And the question that you can ask yourself here when you come up with a solution is, what one or two things need to be true for me to prove or disprove that this solution is good enough? And now that you've answered all of these questions, and I know I've heard some people also are like a little bit scared of the opportunity solution tree as well. But now that you've answered these questions, you know what you want to achieve, you know what the things are that are stopping you from getting there, you have some solutions, you have an experiment and hypothesis, you have all the things that are necessary for you to create an opportunity solution tree. And this is something that you can also use to help you figure out, like, what do I need to do next? It helps you to organize your discovery planning and like, where are we? What have we learned so far? And put it together for everyone to quickly and easily see. You can share this with your team. You can share this with your stakeholders. You can share this with your manager, and anyone can really easily and quickly see what you've learned so far. And after you've answered the questions that I showed previously, it's kind of just like putting it down in a block and connecting these lines because you've answered these questions already. And then that takes us into failing fast and moving on, which is something that you have to keep in mind all throughout doing discovery, not just for the product itself, but for your process as well. You're going to fail. You're going to make mistakes. You're not going to do everything perfectly. I definitely do not do everything perfectly, but I try something and I see, okay, this doesn't work, and I learn from it and I change it and I move on again. I don't dwell on that mistake that I've made. Now, the same thing with these experiments and things that you do for your product as well. So run a small scale experiment, analyze the results, learn from them. Once you've learned from them, change what needs to be changed to your solution, test it again and test it again. And once you can see, okay, my hypothesis has been proven, it works now actually, then go live, watch the results, and you can always improve there as well. Like, it doesn't need to be, I think I read the one time, like someone said, if you were super proud of your first version of something, then you launched too late. You know, like if your hypothesis is proven and you're comfortable enough that this is not going to like break something else, or that it's good enough to take live and make that valuable increase in the metric that you're trying to increase, take it live, watch the results, and then pick your next opportunity, move on to the next thing. You know, don't get too bogged down in discovery. You know, make sure that you keep moving. And then we talked about experiments. I made a suggestion of like using a fake door test, but you could also have done an A/B test, a heat map analysis. You could maybe have come up with like some quick wireframes, and you could have a user interview session with someone and talk them through it and ask them what they think. You could do a prototype test maybe with someone. You can also talk them through and ask them what they think or tell them what they feel. You could do a cohort analysis. So there's also lots of different experiments that you can do as well. And then I've heard sometimes as well, when you run an experiment and then you didn't reach those hypothesis results that you hoped you were going to reach, and then someone said, "Oh, the experiment failed." And here I also just want to say that an experiment, I don't think, can fail just because you didn't reach the hypothesis. An experiment is only a failure if you fail to learn something. So if you didn't build your experiment in such a way that you can actually get some learnings from it, let's say you didn't put in any tracking of events or anything, or if you've gotten that learnings and you did nothing with it, you didn't change anything, that's when an experiment fails. It's not when you didn't reach a hypothesis. You know, so just to keep that in your mind as well, and not be so afraid to go and test something and try something out. And then moving on to the second part of our presentation, and this is going to be a little bit faster, is just talking about our actual stakeholders as well. So when you communicate to your stakeholders, it's very important to be clear on that common goal. So you need to ask yourself every time when you send those messages to your market channels or to your operational staff or to your stakeholders or to your product channel, what am I actually doing? Am I running an experiment? Am I doing some interviews? Am I taking something live? You know, why am I doing it? I found this opportunity. Most people say they are like 70% of the people are like, we found that don't want to go through the checkout because they only have bank transfers, for example. How does it fit into the company and the product strategy? And what benefits or outcome are you trying to achieve? Now, that's again thinking that outcome that you want to achieve. You already answered this question previously. You know, just make sure that it's part of your stakeholder communication as well. And what does success look like? Again, this is also something you've already answered. It's part of your outcome and it's part of your hypothesis that you want to prove as well. So you want to say success would look like if we could increase with this experiment, people that click on the payment rail, we increase that by 10%. That is what success looks like. Now, your stakeholders are pretty clear on what's going on, why it's going on, how it fits in, and what this would look like if it's successful. And then that takes us to the next part of like, this is how you communicate to them. But now the question is like, but when do I communicate to them? And here I kind of jokingly put in, well, over communicate. So is an experiment going live? Communicate it to the markets. Is an experiment finished and you're doing the analysis, or you have the analysis? Is the feature going live? Has the feature been released and there's new results on it that you could get out of it? Like, it's really a success, or it really isn't a success? Did you identify new opportunities, or did you prioritize a new opportunity that you're working on for the next 2 weeks or month or something? Communicate all of these things to your stakeholders as well. I think our stakeholders aren't necessarily against us or against discovery, but I think they just want to be part of this journey, and they just want to know what's going on and have some transparency and some clarity around, what are you learning? I want to know about this as well. What are you taking live? It's exciting. Tell me about the experiments that you're taking live. Tell me about what new things are that you've learned. I also want to see how these experiments are helping us to be better. And there's no better way to get people to buy into discovery as when they actually see the things that you're doing and the things that you're learning from doing these things. And then the third part, which is actually the foundation of everything, is to be data-centric. So if you include data in your stakeholder communication, if you ensure that you can prove your decisions that you've made that is actually backed up by data, if you can create data sources with your experiments, for example, let's say mixed panel tracking and mixed panel dashboards, if you can make it easy for your stakeholders to also track the results and the insights and share some reports with them, you make it so much more difficult for someone to debate certain things with you, because it's much harder to debate numbers than it is to debate ideas. You make it much easier for you to defend decisions that you've made, because again, it's much harder to fight with you about a decision that you've made that's backed by data that you can prove by experimentation, or interviews or dashboards that you can prove, than it is to say, well, I thought this was going to be a good solution, and this is why we do this, and this is why we're not going to do that solution. It's much easier to have that conversation if you have data. And it just makes sure that there's that trust level as well between you and your stakeholders. Because like I said, I don't think stakeholders are generally out to get us. They just want to be calmed by the fact and have transparency about, but why did you choose this? And why did you not take the solution that I suggested, for example? And then moving into the last part of this presentation is about, okay, so now you've done it once or twice, you're communicating to your stakeholders, they're kind of happy about what you're sharing, you've started to find your flow. Now it's just about committing to this and continually doing this. So something that I've seen is some of the clients that I've worked with is, it's really nice when you have a bit of a backlog, so like a Kanban board. I've created this little board here. I've taken out a lot of detail. Yeah, I was going to go like very deep into this, and then I realized I don't have enough time. But having a Kanban board like this, maybe on Jira, maybe on Notion or something, can also just help you to see, okay, these are where these different opportunities are in our flow. And someone can also, like a stakeholder, can also come up, open a ticket and see, okay, this is all the things that they found out about this. This is what the next step is. This is what they still need to answer. And you can take this through this board like this. So you can start off exploring. This is where you want to learn more about your opportunity. Okay, you have a solution, or you're coming up with a solution. You're developing something. Doesn't need to be actual coding development. It could be creating a quick wireframe, or doing some prototype testing, or chatting to someone about this thing. Whatever your experiment is, that's preparing for your experiment, going into experimentation, and then in evaluation. And once you get more comfortable with this, you might end up having an opportunity ticket in each of these blocks. And it's like done, next one, done, next one, done. And you continually have things in experimentation as well. But it comes with time, and it comes with getting a little bit more comfortable with it. But I think having this backlog just gives you that bit of a tool that you can also share with your stakeholders, and a tool for you to see how things are moving along as well. And then something that's like a thing that's helped me quite a lot in previous client engagements as well, is being able to spot those quick wins. So what are those things that are going to add value, not as much value as your top 3 priorities, for example, of opportunities that you have, but it's super easy, super low hanging fruit, something that you can really do in 2-3 days quickly with the team. Let's say, for example, they say, I don't do the payment because I don't know where to find the button. And then you're like, okay, well, your button is actually the same color as the background. Let's make it green, for example, and let's test it out. Super low effort, but it's something that we can send out to our stakeholders and say, hey, we've taken this live. It has made a slight increase in that time while you're busy, experimenting and brainstorming a bigger solution. And it kind of helps you with that cadence as well. So you have like quick win, bigger thing, quick win, bigger thing. And it gets your stakeholders on your side as well, and also helps you to not lose momentum on your delivery too. And then having a routine and actually committing to it. So this is also something that's in that continuous discovery book as well, with Teresa Torres, is she talks about the product trio. And this has really been very helpful for me as well in my experience, because there's only so many different ways and angles that you can look at something with your experience. An engineer sees other opportunities and things that people say differently than you do, and they can actually spot something completely cool and different than you would have done by yourself. Same for the designer and the UX researcher. So this product trio or product portrait or whatever could look different depending on your specific organization, but this is just an example. Maybe then you can take these 3 people together, or these 2 people together, or how many ever, try to keep it not too big, like I would say max 5 or so. And then you have a discovery kickoff. Okay, what are the things that we want to do? What are the ceremonies that we want to do? How are we going to work together on this? What are the first things we want to learn? Have that discovery kickoff, like a team kickoff with them. There's also lots of different mirror boards that you can use for this. And then here are some other ceremonies that I would suggest, like having a discovery session, let's say every second Monday afternoon, where you say, this is what we've learned the last 2 weeks. This is what we want to learn in the next 2 weeks. As a very basic level example, pitching new opportunity ideas of what things that you found so far. And then every, let's say, second Friday, for example, maybe you do a disco refinement, looking at your process and saying, our interviews actually, we're not asking, like it's a little bit not so great. Okay, maybe you would do that after your customer interview as well. Or, you're also looking at your processes and making them better. And then sitting down, like, okay, Thursday mornings, and we have customer interviews. We have 2 customer interviews every Thursday morning, and actually committing to that, making that slot there. Okay, sometimes you might not have found a customer to have that interview with, but this is something that you're putting out time for, and you're actually committing to doing that. And this then helps you to, have that routine in place, which you can adjust as you move along. And now this kind of brings us to the end. I think I've taken a lot of time actually, but just to recap, we've broken it down to basics, happy stakeholders, continuously discovering. So within basics, make sure we understand our customer. Let's not take too long in analysis paralysis. Let's move into action. Let's be practical, and let's fail fast and move on. With our stakeholders, let's be clear on what we are trying to achieve and what we're doing. Let's over communicate to them, and let's be data centric. And then with continuously discovering, let's build a backlog, something that we can actually manage. Let's not forget about those quick wins that we can spot, and let's commit and have an actual routine together. So my question to you with ending this presentation is, what's that one thing that you can maybe start doing tomorrow? Maybe you can already just start creating a Slack channel with you, your engineering manager, and your UX researcher, and say, hey, maybe next week or Friday, we can have a discovery kickoff, because I really think we should do a little bit more discovery and understand why we're doing things. Maybe that's the one thing you can do tomorrow. Or maybe there's something else that you can do. Maybe you're deeper into this process and there's something else that you've thought of now. But just think of that tonight and maybe tomorrow. And that's it from me. You can take a picture of this link and connect to me on LinkedIn if you want to. And you can give me any feedback that you would like to give me on how I could improve this presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Amazing. Thank you, Stefan. Very insightful. I'll take over the screen sharing. And I'll leave it open for questions at the moment, whether you're watching on YouTube, on LinkedIn, or here in the Zoom chat. Please do type out your questions in the comments to Stefan, and we'll be able to relay them shortly. While you're doing that, while you're writing out those questions to Stefan, go into a bit more about product people and product management consultancies. So as I mentioned before, Product People is an interim and fractional product management consultancy. So when you're thinking about when to bring in a consultant like this, can kind of give you a better idea of when that is. So normally we cover a couple of different areas. So interim and fractional product management to cover slow hiring. Obviously, The time to hire when it comes to product management positions can vary, and it can be really long. And so in order to remain continuously improving and not falling into stagnation, you can bring in interim product managers to fill that gap, along with parental leaves and bringing in help for important and urgent initiatives. So driving product discovery or delivery, meeting deadlines, and creating big impact within 3 to 12 months. Beyond that, we also support in product coaching and consulting. So whether that's coaching your current product management team and upskilling, appraising skills, as well as creating and streamlining processes and programs from 0 to 1 to hypergrowth at scale. And lastly, we also support in product discovery. So whether you're discovering the next impactful initiative or product, maybe you're listening to Stefan's presentation and realizing, oh, okay, we need more people to put into place to really run product discovery efficiently. This is where product people can help you as well. So what we're not doing, I think a lot of people tend to confuse product people with recruiters, with freelance marketplaces, with development and design agencies, and that's not what we are. So we have 40 plus product managers on our payroll. We're not sourcing candidates. We're not offering a service for freelancers to come in and find work. We are all within product people on our payroll. So we are not doing these things. That being said, we are friendly with other agencies if you're interested in forming partnerships in that realm. A little briefing on some of our clients. So our B2C clients, obviously some big names in here like Zalando, Tier, Omio, within a range of different industries as well. And then our B2B clients as well, same thing, a range from marketing tech to health tech to ed tech. And some of the positive feedback we've received from clients, I'll let you kind of read through this, but if you listen to Stefan's presentation, I'm sure you can get a good idea of the product management skills that we supply here. And then product people stats, 200 cross-functional teams supported, 40 product leaders and product managers, and then something that we're particularly proud of, 60% women in the team and 66% in leadership. Nice picture of the team members, and if you'll see in the bottom right, obviously one is missing, and that could be you. We're looking for associate product management consultants and recruitment operations coordinators. So please do head to our LinkedIn or to our website to find the career pages and submit an application. Okay, that being said, opening up the floor to questions for Stefan. So what I'll be doing is I'll be relaying some of these questions that have come through, and Stefan will be able to answer them. So Stefan, number one, this question comes from LinkedIn. How does this framework on customer journey change for depending on B2C versus B2B?
Yeah, the good question. Thank you. So I think when we talk about the customer persona, what I've seen so far is that within B2B and B2C, it doesn't change so much because at the end of the day, you're solving for that user, right? So let's say, for example, it's B2C. Your persona could, for example, be, let's say, a passenger of a taxi app service. And what are their goals? Maybe they want to get, I don't know, from A to B and not be unsafe. And their pain points are that the drivers are driving quite badly and they don't, they're not able to get enough drivers to pick them up. But for a B2B, maybe it's someone that's a HR manager, for example, who needs to get new tools to onboard people. Now, one of their goals are they want to be able to spend less time onboarding and offloading new people onto the platform the whole time. And one of the pain points of your platform is every time someone leaves, they need to go in, remember to find this person, search for this person, take them off of the platform. Every time someone joins, they need to add all of this little details and stuff to get them onto this benefit platform that they have through the system that they have. So at the end of the day, you're asking kind of the same questions. What are the goals that these two different people are trying to achieve, whether they're B2C or B2B? What are the things that they need to have done? So almost like, what are their jobs to be done? Who are they? How do you identify them? Why are they using your product? What's the benefit for them? So I think at the end of the day, they pretty much would look the same. At least if you start off with the basics, maybe as you get used to it more and more and more, and you build like much better personas, you might get to the point where you're like, this is the big difference between B2B and B2C. But I think when you start off, the difference isn't that big for you to still get the benefit that you need to get.
Awesome. Thank you, Stefan. The next question also comes from LinkedIn. As product managers, we are often caught up between improving existing product features versus bringing new features. Continuous discovery can fit into both of these scenarios. So what parameters should be taken into consideration for making a decision?
So I wonder what the decision is that this person is asking about. So is a decision about making something new or improving something?
Yeah, it seems to be that improving the decision between whether to improve existing product features versus bringing in completely new features.
Yeah, so I think that kind of would come by the spot where you're seeing like what is that outcome that you want to achieve. So if your outcome is maybe, let's say, increasing, like let's say we use the example again of like, or let's say we use a different example. We change our thoughts a little bit here, and we're thinking about, let's say it's a edtech organization, for example, and you say our outcome for the next year is we want to really double up on our revenue. Maybe they're vague like that, and they just give you like it's revenue. We want to increase the revenue, and you have a specific product that you have, and you have a specific curriculum that you have right there. Now you start unpacking your opportunities. What are the things that are stopping us from getting there? You see on our existing product, there are all these things that we could do to make our existing product better and to get more revenue out of our existing product. But we also see there's people that are saying the actual, like, I've done that already. I've done that curriculum, but I'm looking at something new. Or someone is saying, I want to actually use your platform to present my curriculum. I don't want to just go and learn there. I want to use it for something like that. Maybe that's a completely different product or completely different solution. That's when you get to that prioritization that you have to think about. So now you have all these different opportunities. Some of them are improving something, and some of them are something that might be brand new when you think about it. But let's say, for example, you do ICE scoring. Then you see, okay, how relevant is this pretty much to what I want to try and achieve? Yeah, okay, it's pretty relevant. If we solve this issue, how many people will we be able to solve for? How complex could it be? How confident are we that this could actually, if we solve this, we will help us get to this metric? Let's say, for example, we decide, okay, we're going to create a platform where people can actually load their own curriculum information and they don't just follow our curriculum. Are there actually enough people that want to do that we can see, for example? And how confident are we with that? And then how much effort will it be for us to build that? And then you kind of figure out like, okay, I've done my prioritization. I've done in some of my ICE scoring, and I see the one that actually wins quite much is this whole new product or new feature. Or yes, it looks like it's really cool, but the effort to do this is massive. And that has put it a little bit in third place up against something that is maybe making an adjustment. And then I think sometimes it does still come down to a little bit of a gut feeling. Maybe you talk to your stakeholders or your manager or something, and they're like, you know what, let's take a bet. Let's work on this thing that came down to third just because of effort, but it's something that I think we should invest in. So I think it depends at the end of the day. I hope that answers the question.
Perfect. Thank you, Stefan. The next question actually comes from here in the Zoom chat. How do you conduct the user interviews? Do you usually have a preset topic? Do you have a basic list of questions? In other words, how do you structure the interviews to make sure that they're successful?
Yeah, thank you for this question, Kat. This is something that I've also learned, like I don't know if I can like mention names, but like Free now is really good at this, I think. The first user researcher that I worked with there as well, and she always made it very clear, like, by the point that you get to a customer and you talk to a customer, you better know what you want to learn from them, right? Like, what is it that you want to learn from this person? If you go into an interview and you're just like, I just want to go chat to them and hear what their pain points are, like it makes it very difficult for you to learn something from this customer. So let's say, for example, you're starting off and you just want to build those customer personas. You kind of have these questions already, like, what do they want to achieve? Who are they? Where do they live, for example? What are their pain points with the thing? What has been a really great day using your app? What has been a really bad day using your app, for example? So these are the things I want to learn from this customer. But then let's say it's a little bit later, which your customer persona is. You've done the customer journey map, and you've seen, let's say, by the registration part, there's so many people that fall off. or by the cart abandonment part. Let's use that example again. The cart abandonment part, there's a lot of people that fall off at this state of the journey. Now, this is something I want to learn. This is what I want to talk to a customer about. I've focused and I've seen this is what I want to learn. And then you can build that conversation piece in this interview with the customer based on what is it that you actually want to learn. And you could also ask yourself, are there maybe some hypotheses that I have? So maybe I have an hypothesis that we don't have enough items in our e-commerce platform. That's why they put stuff in their basket and then they want to put in the fifth thing and then they can't find it and they just leave everything. Or they don't have enough payment options, or our app crashes, or whatever, some of these things that you think. And you could maybe just ask around that as well and hear from the customer, like, what is it that they do? So yes, I think it is good to have a basic list of questions, but it shouldn't be generic questions, right? It should still be, what do you actually want to learn? And then there's a step after that as well. So now you're having these interviews, you're getting these interviews, and let's say you have a Word document where you put down your findings. You also want to put that, maybe you've had 5 interviews now. Now you have 5 Word documents. What I like to do, and this is also something I've seen when at some of our clients as well, but they do pretty well, is they have like this mirror board where they put things together. So I can say, okay, these are the 5 people that I've interviewed. Here are some 10 or 15 sticky notes of real things that I think is pretty important for all of them. Okay, at this part, I'm going to group them together, and I can say this part is all about trusting the payment process. This part is all about the amount of stuff that we have in our e-commerce platform that they can choose from, and you can use that to kind of build your opportunity solution tree as well. Like, what are those opportunities that you can have there? But I hope that answers your question, Kat.
Super thorough, Stefan. Another question from LinkedIn. When is product discovery not required?
When is product discovery not required? So we've sometimes had some of these situations as well, but I think it would depend. Again, I hate it when someone gives me that answer, but I think it would depend on your product and your organization. So sometimes maybe you work on a product that has very high competition. There's like 3 or 4 products like this in the region that you work. Super high competition, which kind of means a lot of the times that they're very similar to each other as well, right? There's like you don't have to solve so many problems from scratch because they've kind of solved it already, and you can kind of like do what they do and it works. So sometimes, and I've done this before, and you kind of see, you do some benchmarking, you see, okay, this is an issue that we have, but at least at this point, you also kind of do a little bit of discovery, I guess. You maybe don't do so much experimentation, but you still do discovery because you found like, this is a problem worth solving. Because otherwise, why are you doing it anyway? Like, did someone just decide that this is important? So this is a problem worth solving. And we've seen that, let's say, I don't know, let's say another company that's our competitor has already solved this by doing this, and it's working. And these people that are using this competitor as well and using mine also say, this is really nice, we use this usually, like, why can't you also do something like that, for example? Then that's kind of a quick win, copy with pride type of thing. Like, let's not reinvent the wheel. There is a solution that works. Let's focus on something more innovative, and let's just do this thing, and we know that it works. I would say then maybe you don't need to do a lot of experimentation, but I would struggle to understand how you can prove anything is worth doing if you don't do any discovery, because discovery also starts at the point of finding some data. It doesn't always need to be a customer interview or an experiment that you do discovery with, but you need to at least have some data to prove that the problem that you're solving is worth solving. And that's a bit of discovery as well. You might not do the fully fledged discovery, but I don't think you can really get away with not doing any discovery.
Okay. Thank you for that. We'll do a couple more questions. We're running a bit short on time, so I'll ask a few more. This one comes from Anna in the Zoom chat. In the outcome you want to achieve example, how is the desirable outcome usually determined relatively early in the process? The example talks about decreasing cart abandonment by 20%. How can I know from the get-go that 20% is a reasonable goal?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. And sometimes and something I think I also struggle with sometimes as well, because you would, let's say I hope that you have a company strategy and you have something that is kind of your North Star for the next 6 months or 3 months or year or something. And usually you as a product manager, if you have the opportunity and you've been given the responsibility and the ownership to this level in your product, you would probably also need to come up with some OKRs or some type of goals that you want to achieve in the next 3 months or 6 months or something like that. So I would hope that when you start with discovery, that this is not the first time that you think of an outcome for your product. It should be something that is there. And I think how you can get to know whether that 20% is a reasonable goal is probably something that you can when you start testing and when you have some of these hypotheses and you start running some experiments and stuff, and you've seen, wow, we've been trying this and we see that this isn't actually so reasonable as we thought it was. Like, iterate not only maybe on what you're doing towards the goal, but also be open to iterating the actual goal. You know, maybe you realize after 2 months, 20% is ridiculous. Like, this isn't an achievable goal. Like, we've done some stuff. We've realized now that it's not achievable. 10% is actually more achievable, or 15% is achievable. Not because we'll definitely hit it, you know, because that's also not what the goal should be. If you reach 70% of your goal, it's also supposed to be, you know, pretty good. But I think we should think iteratively about our goals and not just what we do to achieve our goals. Yeah, so I would say that's how you can know whether it's reasonable. And let's say you don't have any outcomes yet for your product, but you at least have the company kind of goal or some strategy setting by the company. I would say it's worth it to then come up with that outcome for yourself, whether you do the discovery or whether you don't do it, to also show benefit for yourself, for your team in the company as well. I'm not sure if that answered your question at all, Anna.
Thank you, Stefan. Let's do, I think we have time for one more here in Zoom. Let's see if I can get to it. Sorry, my computer. Okay. Let's go. Where is the question? Sorry. How do you test assumptions? What framework do you use to assess risk, and what strategies do you use to de-risk assumptions?
Okay, so I'm going to start with the first one there. How do you test assumptions? So that would be with your experiment. So some people go really next level technical on this. I think you don't need to go so technical. I think it's really great if you do, and you can like make it really awesome, the findings that you can find. I'm not the most technical person that you'll ever meet. So for me, it's just like, is this something that we can measure? Let's say let's say it's the cart abandonment thing, right? Because we're talking about this now for a while. I've been talking about it for a while. And let's say we put in a PayPal fake door test, for example. How can we make this, how can we test this assumption? Our assumption is 10% more people that get to the screen will actually click on something to do payment for example. So how can we test this? We need to put some type of mixed panel tracking or something, whatever tool we use. We need to be able to track whether people click on that button or whether people click on this button. This one we probably already have, and this one we can see then. They're going to see a screen that says, it can't happen in your region or whatever. They're not going to be able to do the actual payment, but we've set our experiment up in such a way that we can test the assumption. We need an assumption first, and we need to make sure that the way that we set it up actually allows us to test the assumption. But that would depend on what experiment you're doing, what assumption you have, right? So some organizations are really very well set up to do this because they have like these different dashboards and things like that. But you need to just ask yourself, can I track this assumption? And how am I going to track it? But it depends on the thing that you're doing. And what framework do you use to assess the risk? And what strategies do you use to de-risk assumptions? So what I've seen at some of the clients that we've worked on, which is really actually quite nice, is we always have a guardrail metric as well. So that thing, you have this assumption of something that you want to reach, something that you want to be able to show, which is your main thing that you want to say. We've decreased cart abandonment rate by 5% by doing this. But what's the thing that we don't want to negatively impact? You know, to make sure this, by putting a PayPal link in here, we might then have a lot of people that we might make the cart abandonment actual rate maybe even lower, because now people are frustrated because I don't know what you could say is a guardrail metric in this situation. But I think having that guardrail metric helps you to de-risk, so that you can say at the end of the day, we've done this experiment and we didn't just reach this target that we had. To hell with the rest of the platform that we might be hurting. We're going to take this live. That you can say, we've reached this target. We've looked at the guardrail metrics that we could have impacted, something that we could have impacted negatively, and we've seen that they were not impacted negatively. So we are safe to take this live, and that helps you to de-risk that a little bit. That is what I use. I don't use like very technical, cool other strategies or frameworks, but that's what I usually use. Like, just at least saying, we know that we could potentially have hit this metric and hurt it, but we didn't. We made sure to make that part of our assumption test as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Stefan, and thank you all of you for submitting your questions. We're ending right on time here. Really appreciate your time, Stefan, and everybody. We hold these sessions every single week, every Tuesday evening. So please do share with your friends, and we'll see you next time. We'll be ending the live stream now. Thank you for joining us.